Hello everyone. I hope you enjoyed learning the very basic things in Python, such as the if statements, the for loops, the while loops, working with data types and storing data into a variable. Now we will have a step up into your learning Python journey into the topic of functions. These are very crucial. Without these, you won't be able to move forward anywhere in programming at all. These are the very basic. This is very basic stuff that is used in all programming languages. It is widely used everywhere. Without this, you can't move forward at all. So you pay attention and learn how these things work. It is very important. So what we will cover today is I'll give you an introduction of what functions are with an analogy of how it is somewhat similar to mathematics and mathematical functions. And then we will look at the syntax of defining a function in Python and how we can given an input variable, and then it will do some task on that particular input variable, and then it will give us an output. That is how you can pass parameters and arguments, and then how you can get a value out of that, and then how we can use this function. So once you are define a function, once you're given the input value, once you have set up the return values, how we can use this function. That is how we can call a function so that we can use it whenever we need. This may all sound Greek to you now, but by the end of this video you will have a clear understanding of how you can define a function and how you can use a function. So I will start by giving you a very simple analogy that that is the functions that are there in mathematics. In mathematics, you can think of a function as something that takes in an input value and then gives you an output value. So for example, f of x equal to x squared is a function that takes in an input x and then evaluates x squared. Right? That is what this function is doing. If you give it an input value of 4, it gives you 16. If you give it an input value of 5, it does 5 raised to the power 2, that gives you 25. That is how you can that is how things work in mathematics. Also, a function can take more than a single input value. So in this function f of x comma y comma z, what it is doing is it takes in 3 parameters and then it multiplies individually each of the parameters. X multiplied by y multiplied by z. If you have an example 1, 2 and 3, it multiplies 1 into 2, which is 2, and then 2 into 3, that is 6. That is how you get this value. Okay, we can implement this mathematical functions in Python, but we can do a lot more. But this is not exactly what functions are in Python. There's a lot more you can do, but just keep this in mind for now. This is one thing what Python functions can do. I will show you how it is implemented in Python. So to define a function, you use the keyword def, and then you give it a name of the function. So since we are implementing square of a function, I'm giving the name square. You need to have a parentheses so that you can tell the function what input values it can take. So it will take a single input x. Don't worry too much about the syntax. I will get into details later. Just now, go with the flow. Bear with me for a bit so that I can move forward by giving you an idea of how functions are in Python. So you use a define keyword def. Give it a space, and then you name the function square, and then parentheses, and then the input that the function is going to take x, and then semicolon, enter. The semicolon is used for indentation purposes, right? So whatever comes under the semicolon is, we call it as the body of the function. The body of the function is only executed within the function scope. I'll get into details about this later, but bear with me. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to evaluate the square of x. So you use the exponential operator x star star, and then you give it 2 because we are making a square out of it. Now you can either you can store this calculated value in you can store the value of x squared in a variable called calculated cal, and then you have to when a function takes an input value, if you want to get something out of the function, you have to return what it calculated. So you use the keyword return, and then the variable that you want to return. So return cal. Now the function is defined, right? Now if you run it, the program is getting ran, but it is not showing anything. There is nothing. So if you want to make use of a function in Python, you are supposed to call the function square of, let's say, 4. If you run it now, you still see nothing, because a function returns a value, it does not print a value. There's a difference between printing and returning. I will get in the details of that also later. So you have to print what the value, so square of 4 is returning. You can print it, right? See, now it gets printed. So you can implement a mathematical function that you studied in mathematics in Python by using the simple syntax and whatnot. I will get into the details. Okay. So this is one analogy. The second analogy that I want to give you is making a sandwich. Making a sandwich, there's quite a few processes involved in making a sandwich. Firstly, you have to go to the shop, select the bread, pay, and then after you're done with selecting the bread, you need to pay at the counter, walk home, and then you need to prepare your spread. Open the spread jar, take a knife, put it on the bread, close the spread jar, and then you have to gather your filling ingredients, such as the tomatoes, onions, chicken. You gather them, then you cut them for preparation purposes, and then you place the filling on top of the bread, and then you bring the slice together, and then press gently, and then cut it into half. That's how you make a sandwich. This is just a rough idea of how you can make a sandwich. Okay, so if you want to do that, there's quite a bit of process involved, right? There's almost 13 steps involved. So think of making a sandwich in terms of program, right? There are 13 steps involved. So you have to execute it one by one by one. So I run it now. There are 13 steps which got executed. You made the sandwich. If you want to make a sandwich again, you have to go through this procedure again. Go to the shop, get back, make the stuff. So if you want to do it again and again, you need to write this thing and do it again, right? If you think about it broadly, you can break this 13 steps into smaller steps. The first step is getting the bread itself, and the second step is having the spread on the bread, and the third step is making the ingredients filled up, and then the final step is closing the sandwich. You can make into 4 steps. So you can have an individual function that says get bread. Get bread will take care of getting you the bread. You don't have to worry about how it gets you the bread. It can go to a shop, it can go to a bakery, it can go to a factory. It doesn't matter. But this function will definitely get you bread, right? And then the apply spread will take care of applying the spread for you, and then add filling will take care of adding the filling for you. So similarly for closed sandwich, you don't have to worry about how these things are implemented. All you have to know is get bread, apply the spread, add the filling, and then close the sandwich. If you know these things exist, you can just call them, right? You can just call them, and then they will get it done for you. So if you run it, yeah, it called the get bread function, apply spread function, add filling function, close sandwich function. Yeah, you are done making a sandwich. Okay, this idea may be very vague, and it might not get to the point of explaining functions. The reason why I brought you this thing is, instead of writing the complete making a sandwich code into 13 lines, you can break them into chunks. So if you read it, you can easily understand it, right? There is get bread, there is apply spread, add filling, and close sandwich. You can easily understand it. If you look into actual code bases, such as codes that are used in making websites, and codes that are used in making databases, you don't write a complete sequence of code in a single file. You break them into understandable chunks. So these functions give you an idea of what are the particular set of tasks that the function is doing, without worrying about how it is implemented, because the function guarantees you that it is implemented correctly. So what I want to tell you is, you can have a big line of code. You can break them into chunks. So each chunk will perform a particular task. So a function is used in Python to perform a particular task. That is what I wanted to tell you. Okay, I hope it is clear. Okay, if you don't know, you have been using functions that are there in Python already. The print is a function, input is a function, int is a function, float is a function. All these things that you see are basically functions that are defined in the Python source code, and then you're just calling them whenever you want them to use them. Let me quickly run you through the basic functions in a list. If you have a list consisting of 4 elements, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you want to find the maximum element in the list, you call the maximum function with an input of a, which is the variable containing the array. If you want to find the minimum of the function, you call the minimum function with the input a, and if you want to get the length of the function, you call the length function with the input a. If I print them, you will see the maximum is 4, so it is 4. The minimum is 1, so it is 1. The length of the array is 4. What you have done here is you simply use the inbuilt functions that are there in Python. Okay, now I'll get into the syntax of how functions are properly defined, the proper syntax of defining a function, which I said I will teach you later. So here it is. So the syntax for defining a function starts with the def keyword. The def keyword is used to tell the interpreter in Python that you are going to define a function now. So you use the def keyword, that is def, and then you give it the name of the function. So name of the function, this is the name of the function, and then it can take parameters x, y, z, as much as you like. It's up to you. For simplicity's sake, we will give it a single parameter x. This is the name of the function, this is the parameter x. Okay, and then whatever comes under the body is the particular steps involved in the particular function. So step 1, and then step 2, step 3. Okay, finally, let's say you are making a square of the function, so it will be x square. Okay, so this is the return statement. The return statement is used to throw back back the evaluated expression. Okay, so that is the return statement. You can return a variable, you can return an expression. Okay, instead of you returning return y, you can also return x squared. This will also give you the same value. Okay, so if you want to make use of a function, you need to call the function as I said. So name underscore function, the name of the function, and then you call it. You're giving it an input of 4. Okay, if you print it, you will see exactly what it gives, 16. Step 1, step 2, step 3 are executed, and then the 4th line is executed. Okay. Okay, I will go through the syntax of defining a function one more time. The def keyword stands for define. When you tell it, the interpreter will understand it as if you're going to define a function, and then you have to follow it by a name of the function. After that, you have to pass in the parameters. It is not necessary that you always have to pass parameters. It can be empty as well. Okay, and then once you pass the parameter, you would define the body of the function, which is one indent. If there's no indentation, the code won't work. There should be an indentation after the semicolon. Okay, and the return value will perform the task, and then it will give you a value once the function ends. Okay, if you want to use a function, you are supposed to call it. You are supposed to say the name square and then pass in the argument, and then it will give you the evaluated expression in the variable value. You have to note the difference between parameter and an argument. An argument is a value that is passed into a function when it is called. Okay, it corresponds to the parameters of the particular function, that is square here, and a parameter is a variable in a method definition. Okay, it is a placeholder for the actual value. So you can have a mental model of what functions are. So you can think of functions as something that performs a particular sequence of steps and gives you something meaningful. You can think of parameters as functions input, and then the body can be thought of as a series of steps that are done in order to convert this input into something meaningful, that is the output. and then the return statement can be thought of as a means of communicating the output to the rest of the code. So once you get the value, let's say you get the square of 4, how are you going to use it? What is the purpose of using it? So you can store it in a variable, and then you can use it wherever you want it. So that is that's a simple understanding of how functions are in Python. Another aspect of parameters is it can take more than one parameter. So if you want to calculate an area of a rectangle has a length and breadth, so there are two parameters, x and y. You return after performing the calculation, that is x multiplied by y, that will give you the area. And then it can also take 3 parameters, 4 parameters, 5 parameters. It is really up to you to decide on the use case of your function. So let's say you're calculating the volume of a particular cuboid. It's going to be x comma y comma and z. You can return the calculated value, that is x star y star z. So you want to make use of this function, so you call them print area of say 4 comma 6, and then if your volume is 4 comma 5 comma 6, length breadth and height 4 5 6, it should give you a value, of course. So 24 is the area of rectangle, and then 120 is the volume of the cuboid. It is also not necessary that functions should always have parameters as their input. Okay, they can also have no parameters as their input. So in this function, you can simply use a function to perform a particular task, like printing a name of the person. So that is a particular task you can do. So I will give you an example where this is useful. So let's say you want to collect details of a particular person, right? You usually have a series of input statements, and then you can just have a function that says details, which will collect the name, age, phone number, or class section, department, university, all those details, right? You can put it in a function and then make it abstract, so that it is easy to read the code. So this define details function gets the name and the age from the input, and then once it is stored in the variable name and age, it returns the variable return name and age. You can a function can not only return a single value, it can return more than one value. We'll talk about that more. So this returns name and age, and then the print details function takes an input as name and age, and then it will print the name of the person and the age of the person. So first the function in the details is called, and then it stores the return name and name outside. I have made it outside because this name outside is outside the function, and then similarly for age is outside the function. Okay, and I will run the code, and then it will print the details once it gets the data. Okay, I'll run the code now. It will ask you to input the name. So I'll enter my name Safwaan, and then my age is 21. So you can see it from the printer, the name, your name is Safwaan, and my age is 21. And the function does not necessarily have any return value. So if you just want to perform a task, you can just exclude the return value. So in this example, you can see there is no return value, right? So which is also doable in Python functions. As I mentioned, functions can return more than one value. Here we have a few examples. So in this function, there is get circle info. You get the radius. You get the radius as input, and then you first calculate the area of the radius, and then you calculate the circumference of the radius, and then you return the area and the circumference. Yeah, you're calling. So once you return a variable, once you return more than two variables or more than one variable, you have to get them in order. So area will map to circle area, and then circumference will map to circle circumference. So the order matters here. Okay, and then one more thing to keep in mind is when you define a function, right, you have to only call them after you have defined them. So let's say you call this function before the definition. You have defined them below, but you're calling the function before the definition. This function detail is being called before it is defined. So what will happen is it won't run because it says a name error. Details is not defined. When the Python interpreter runs, it will run line by line. So when it hits the first line, it will check for the definition of details. The details, this function is not defined before line 1, so it was showing name error. So keep in mind that you always define your functions and then you execute them. Don't call the function before the definition. So this should come below. Okay, and after that, functions can be used as expressions. What this means is, so here's an example, right? So this example defines a function square. Okay, so let me define that. Define square of x, return x squared. Okay, so let's say you call this function square x once, and then you give it a value 4. This will currently have the value 16, so print a will have 16 as the value. Let me print that. Okay, now you can call another square function, right? And then you can give it another value. Let me just give, for sake of simplicity, the same value, square 4. Okay, now it will be square 4 will first get executed, okay, and then it will give you 16, and then this will get executed, it will give you 16 again, and then they both will be added. So a will 16 plus 16 will be 32, and then a will be added, and then a will be having the value 32. So a will be 32 now. So function can be used as expressions, or you can use any kind of operators. X minus, it will be 0. You can also multiply, you can also exponentiate it, or you can also divide it, right? It is one. You can see the outputs over here. When I subtract it to a 0, when I think I squared it, yeah, 256, and then this was exponential and this was division. You can use functions as expressions also, so which is very useful. Okay, now let us go and make functions of our own. Okay, so you have been using functions of minimum, maximum, uh, length of an array. All these are functions that are used on a list or an tuple. Okay, let us try to implement these functions by our own. So let's call a function called find max, and then it takes in an input array. Okay, and then let's first define a maximum value. Maximum value will be, let's call it the first element, or the element on the 0th index. Okay, that let's just assume that is the maximum, and then we will iterate to the list for element in input list. Input, it is input list. Yeah, my bad, it is not an array but a list. Okay, input list, and then if the current element in the loop is greater than the previous element, that is the maximum element, that is the maximum value, okay, we will set the maximum value to the current element. Once that is done, we can return the maximum value. Okay, let us test this out. So if you have a list of a1 4, and then I call this function find max of the array a, of the list a, yeah, the output is 4. That is the maximum element, 4. If there is a 5 is printed. If there is something absurdly long, it will also print that. Okay, now let us try to define the minimum function. Find the minimum of the input list. So let's define the minimum value similarly as the first element of the list. Then let us loop through the list. If element in input list, for element in input list, if element is less than the minimum value, we set the minimum value to element, and then we return the maximum or the minimum value. Okay, let us try this out. So find minimum, it should be 1. The answer should be 1. So if it is, yeah, it works. If it is negative 1222, that also works. Now let us define for finding the length. Find the length of the input array. Oh, sorry, I keep on using array because I'm used to a different programming language. It's a list, but length is equal to, say, let's say 0. We initialize it to 0 first, and then for lm in input list, we just increment the count, and then we return the length. Okay, let us try to run this. Find the length of the array A. It has 5, 6, 7 elements, so it should print 7. I can add 2 more, 3 more, it should print 10. Okay, now we defined 3 functions by ourselves that finds the minimum, maximum, and the length of the array. And you can also give the same name as the function that is defined in Python. It could be minimum, it could be maximum as well. So that also works. So let me show you a demo of that. So maximum, minimum. Okay. Yeah, so maximum is 5, minimum is 1, and then the length is also 5. It works. Now, instead of calling this function individually, right, what we can do is we can call this function from another function. Let's call this new function as define maximum, minimum, and length of an array A. Okay, what this will do is it will call all the 3 functions. So maximum of A, maximum of minimum of B, and sorry, minimum of A, and then length of A. Okay, we're supposed to store this all in a variable. Just a minute. So max equal to max of A, and then min is equal to min of A, and then length is equal to length of A. We can just print all of these. Print max comma length comma min comma length. Okay, and then I call this function maximum of minimum of length of the array of the list A. My bad, what's wrong here? Cannot access local variable max. Wait, there is a mistake I made. Okay, the mistake was I named it the same. So this max is referring to this max, so that was an issue. So let's call this max val, and then let's call this minimum val, and then this will be length val. So yeah, so control shift, okay, length. Okay. Now let's run it. I hope it works. Okay, it didn't get printed. Max because I didn't call it. Okay, max of A. Okay, it got printed 5, 1, and 5. So you can call functions within another function. That also works. So this was a quick introduction to functions and how you can define a function and make your own functions. I hope it was understandable. Okay, thank you so much for watching.